dusty corner shop into a multi-million-dollar empire. I gave up my youth, my weekends, and my personal life to ensure its success. But yesterday, my parents handed the entire company over to my younger sister, smiling as they told me, "She's just better with people." They thought I would stay and keep doing all the hard work while she took the credit and the profits. Instead, I packed my things, handed over my keys, and walked away without saying a word. They thought they had won. But what my family completely forgot is that I didn't just manage the shop. I was the shop. Within a single week, their biggest client quit, followed swiftly by another. By the end of the month, they were begging me to come back. Follow my story until the end to see the look on their faces. My name is Audrey, and at 36 years old, I've officially spent more than half my life running a business that was never truly mine. For 22 grueling years, I was the heart, the spine, and the muscle behind our family's retail and distribution shop. When I was just 14, while other girls my age were worrying about school dances and summer vacations, I was down in the dusty basement of our original storefront, counting inventory by flashlight and organizing heavy supply crates. My parents were always quick to praise my work ethic back then, mostly because my endless sacrifices allowed them to live a comfortable life while keeping their overhead costs next to nothing. As the years rolled on, I watched that tiny, struggling corner shop morph into a multi-million-dollar distribution empire, entirely off the back of my labor. I managed the grueling logistical nightmares, built personal, bulletproof relationships with our high-volume B2B clients, and stayed up until midnight balancing the ledgers while everyone else slept. Meanwhile, my younger sister, Chloe, was treated like royalty. She was shielded from a single day of hard labor, pampered with expensive clothes, and eventually sent off to a prestigious university paid for by the very shop I was bleeding for. I never complained because I genuinely believed I was building a legacy for our future. I foolishly thought my family viewed me as an equal partner, an irreplaceable asset who had earned her place at the top. The major suppliers didn't even bother calling my parents anymore. They called me because they knew I was the only one who actually understood how the operation worked. But my family's gratitude turned out to be an illusion, and my 22 years of absolute loyalty were about to be completely erased. The betrayal finally came on a rainy Sunday evening. We were all gathered around my parents' mahogany dining table for what I assumed was a standard family dinner. I had just finished explaining a massive distribution deal I had secured for the upcoming quarter when my father cleared his throat, silencing the room. He and my mother exchanged a loaded glance before he announced that they were officially retiring. I smiled, feeling a surge of pride, assuming this was the exact moment they would finally pass the torch to me after 22 years of backbreaking labor. Instead, my mother reached across the table, took my younger sister's hand, and dropped a bombshell that made my blood run absolutely cold. They were legally transferring 100% of the company ownership directly to Chloe. I sat there, completely paralyzed, waiting for the punchline of a cruel joke. When I finally found my voice to ask why, my father completely refused to meet my eyes. He awkwardly muttered that Chloe had recently finished her degree in marketing, and to quote him exactly, "She's just better with people, Audrey. She has the face for a modern brand." I turned to look at Chloe, expecting her to refuse, to at least acknowledge my decades of sacrifice. Instead, she offered me a smug, condescending smile. She took a slow sip of her wine and casually brushed off my entire life's work, telling me she would still need me to stay on and handle all the boring back-end paperwork. My lawyer practically begged me to fight the decision. He told me we could drag the entire probate and corporate transfer through the courts for years, freezing the business accounts and forcing my parents into a corner. But as I looked at the legal documents sitting on my desk, a strange sense of clarity washed over me. I looked at the paperwork and said, "Give it all to them." My lawyer looked at me like I had completely lost my mind, but my decision was final. On the day of the official handover, we gathered in the main office. Chloe arrived looking like a high-powered executive, flanked by my parents who were beaming with pride. She pushed a stack of papers toward me, demanding the master passwords, the private client ledgers, and the key to the main warehouse. I didn't say a single word. I picked up the pen and signed every last document cleanly, officially relinquishing any legal claim to the empire I had built. Chloe smiled triumphantly, snatching the papers away as if she had just won a grand prize. I calmly stood up, walked into my office, and placed 22 years of personal items into a single cardboard box. As I walked out the front doors and handed my master keys to the security guard, my family thought they had successfully cast me aside. They truly believed they had won. What they completely failed to realize in their greed was that the shop's success wasn't in the building or the name. It was entirely in me. Chloe immediately set out to prove she was the visionary my parents claimed she was, wasting thousands of dollars on a massive, theatrical relaunch event. She invited local influencers and filled the showroom with expensive decorations, completely ignoring the basic inventory orders that kept the business alive. Because she spent her week focusing on vanity metrics rather than logistical execution, the warehouse fell into absolute chaos. Orders were severely delayed, inventory levels were completely mismanaged, and the staff had absolutely no direction. Within exactly 7 days, the cracks in her flawless facade turned into deep, unfixable craters. Our oldest and highest volume B2B client, a major regional distributor who brought in nearly 40% of our monthly revenue, called the office furious about a massive, unfulfilled shipment. Instead of resolving the issue with the quiet professionalism I had practiced for decades, Chloe panicked and used her famous people skills to patronize them, defensively shifting the blame onto the warehouse staff. The client was absolutely disgusted by her arrogance, immediately canceled their exclusive contract, and severed ties with the company entirely. Before my parents could even process the loss of their primary income stream, a second hammer blow struck the business. Our primary organic product distributor pulled up their trucks, only to realize that the strict quality assurance checks I personally conducted every single morning had been completely abandoned by Chloe. Citing a massive breach of contract regarding substandard product quality, they pulled their inventory off our shelves and canceled their relationship by the end of the month. In less than 30 days, Chloe's absolute incompetence had driven our 22-year-old empire directly to the absolute brink of total financial collapse. By the third week, the proud family business was completely drowning in a sea of red ink. The severe cash flow shortage triggered massive, automated supplier penalties, and an impending operational shutdown loomed over the entire warehouse. Meanwhile, I was enjoying the first real vacation of my entire adult life, sitting peacefully on a beach and deliberately ignoring the frantic barrage of phone calls and texts lighting up my phone from my parents and sister. They had completely blocked me out of their lives, so I saw no reason to let them interrupt my peace. Eventually, on a quiet Tuesday evening, I finally decided to answer a call from my mother, whose voice was absolutely trembling with weeping, desperate panic. The arrogant tone from Sunday dinner was completely gone, replaced by a raw, synthetic sympathy as she tried to manipulate me using heavy family guilt. She openly admitted that Chloe was completely overwhelmed and begged me to return immediately as a temporary, back-end consultant to fix the operational mess and save the family from an impending, humiliating bankruptcy. I listened quietly to her tears, remembering how easily they had discarded me just a few weeks prior. I didn't get angry, nor did I raise my voice. I simply told her that I would be willing to meet them at the shop the following morning to discuss the matter in person, but only on my terms. As I hung up the phone, I knew the dynamic had completely shifted. The scared widow of their expectations was gone, and they were about to realize exactly who held all the power. I walked into the shop the next morning to find the showroom completely deserted. The bustling energy I had maintained for 22 years was entirely replaced by a heavy, desperate silence. My parents and Chloe were waiting for me in the main office, looking completely haggard and exhausted. Chloe's arrogant posture was gone. She sat slumped in her chair, forced to swallow her immense pride. My father pushed a new contract toward me, offering me a standard manager salary if I would just step back in, untangle the logistical nightmare, and smooth things over with the suppliers. I looked at the contract, then looked directly at my family, and flatly refused to sign it. Before they could start yelling or accusing me of being selfish, I laid out my ultimate masterstroke. I opened my briefcase and revealed the registration papers for my own independent consulting and logistics firm, which I had quietly set up the very week I walked away. My mother started crying, asking how I could abandon the family business to start a rival company, but I silenced her by revealing the most shocking twist of all. The major regional clients who had abruptly canceled their accounts with Chloe hadn't just left to find a cheaper alternative. The moment they realized I was no longer running the operations, they actively tracked me down, refusing to do business with anyone else. They had already signed exclusive, high-value contracts with my new firm, completely bypassing the old family shop. I hadn't stolen anything. The clients simply followed the only person they actually trusted. I stood up, leaving them alone in a hollowed-out building that was now nothing more than an empty shell. I reflect on my thriving new life from my beautiful new office, feeling the absolute peace of being appreciated for my true value and enjoying total financial independence. My new firm has grown exponentially, built entirely on a foundation of mutual respect and hard work. Meanwhile, the karma catching up with my family was swift and absolute. Chloe completely abandoned the failing storefront just 2 months later, unable to handle the intense pressure, and moved to another state. Left with mounting debts and no operational revenue, my parents were forced to liquidate the remaining inventory and sell the building at a massive loss just to avoid total ruin. Now, I'm curious about you who listen at the city you're watching from so I can see how far my